Good morning. I'm going to wait just a minute because Facebook is telling me it's having a hard time connecting. It looks like we are rolling, so if anybody is out there, please give me a thumbs up or a heart so I know that you're there. And for some reason my Wi-Fi connection is a little slow today. How's everybody doing out there? It's Friday. Woo! I would love to know what you guys are doing this weekend. If you care to share, put it in the comments below. And as soon as you come on, do a shout out in the comments. Please let me know that you're watching and that you're there. And remember, hearts and thumbs up help me know how to tailor our content. So when I see you guys going, yeah, I like this stuff, then I'll do more of that. So please make sure to use that liberally. I also wanted to mention that if you like these Facebook Live broadcasts, there is a little spot down below, I believe, where you can click notifications to be alerted when these broadcasts show up, so you don't have to remember or come looking for them. They'll come looking for you. So do make sure to click those so that you get the notifications. Most of the time I'm here on Fridays, but I'm also going to start to do a few other little random ones. So that would be fun if you want to join in and participate. I hope everyone's having a good Friday. We're talking about Epsom salt baths today. Who's had one? Who's taken one? I want to know. Share with me if you think that they work for you or they do not work for you. I would love to hear from you. Okay, my first story with an Epsom salt bath was many years ago when I got a work injury and my sister threw me in an Epsom salt bath and made me sit there and soak for 20 minutes, and it was super salty and steamy, and I didn't know really what was going on, but I got out and I felt like I was completely inebriated and very lightheaded, and not from the heat. It wasn't super hot. I think it was just from the salts, and I ended up in bed for 14 hours. It's quite funny. But that's my first memory of an Epsom salt bath. And since then, having gone through chiropractic school and been an athlete and now a trainer, Epsom salt baths comes up a lot, obviously, because there are injuries and sprains and strains and achy joints and things that traditionally we understand are helped by Epsom salt baths. So the fun thing was, I've been doing some research over the last couple days, and I came across this fantastic article that we're going to go through today, and I think it's going to kind of give you some interesting things to ponder about Epsom salt baths. But let's get into kind of the basics, the traditional understanding of Epsom salt baths. So first of all, Epsom salts, I did not know this, but Epsom is a spring, crystal spring in England, and that's where it comes from. And there actually isn't any salt in Epsom salts. It's magnesium sulfate, and so it refers to the chemical structure. It is nothing to do with Dead Sea salts. Dead Sea salts comes from, you guessed it, the Dead Sea, and that's in Israel, so not anywhere near London or England. So Epsom salts comes from England. It's not actually salt, it's magnesium sulfate. And when it gets dumped into water, it actually separates into magnesium and sulfate. So it breaks apart. And the idea has always been that the salt content has many therapeutic beneficial properties. And if you look up on the Epsom salt websites or lots of blogs, it'll talk about muscle relaxation, anti-inflammatory, reducing pain for sprains and strains, fibromyalgia, back pain, bruising, blood clots, nerve function, you name it. Epsom salts apparently can address all of those things. Well, I came across an article from a guy named Paul Ingram, 16 pages, and I read it all, and it was awesome. So if you get the chance, there we go. And I know that says it's backwards, but it does Epsom salts work. And thank you, Paul Ingram, for taking the time to write this extremely exhaustive research of all the information out there on Epsom salts. And he writes a very hilarious article about how he believes Epsom salt baths are a bunch of baloney. And he makes some very good points. And I want to share those with you today because, of course, we don't just want to willy-nilly take someone's advice and assume that it's all backed with data. Because, in fact, at the end of today's talk, you're going to see that Epsom salt baths are not backed with data. In fact, they're not at all backed with data. But let's not get too far away because I still think they're amazing. But we're going to talk about Paul's research first. So Paul talks about all the different main categories of things that Epsom salt is beneficial for. So one of the things that we talk about, and I certainly have taught patients this, that in an Epsom salt bath, if it's salty enough, there's going to be an osmolality reaction there that happens. There's going to be toxins pulled across the skin barrier if the water is salty enough, because from 5th grade science, you know that when you have a semi-permeable membrane and you have two concentrations, they're going to even each other out, right? Because they're going to cross over one way or the other depending on concentration. And that's what osmosis is, or osmolality. And so the understanding has always been when you submerge yourself in a super, super salty bath, it's going to pull not only water, but toxins across the skin barrier. Well, Paul's very astute observation is the fact that our skin is actually not very permeable at all. In fact, if it were, we would be like an inchworm on a sidewalk on a sunny Saturday, completely dehydrated. And his point is very valid. It is hard to get things through the skin barrier. In fact, those medication patches or DSMO creams are very, very scientifically designed in order to have teeny tiny little particles so they can get through that skin barrier, because it isn't easy to cross. And so his point of pulling all these things across the barrier so that you can get rid of toxins is lovely in theory, but he proclaims that it doesn't actually work. And fair enough, there actually isn't a lot of science to show that it does. And his other point is, if you're going to be pulling toxins across the surface of the skin, then the only toxins you're pulling are the ones right underneath the skin, because you're certainly not going to scout out all the toxins in the liver and deep in the muscle tissue with a little bit of salty water. And that also is a very valid point. So the thought that all of this muscle relaxation and quick healing and repair and anti-inflammatory happens from these Epsom salt baths is just not true. I love that. I like that point because he made me really think about that. The other thing he talks about is, we talked about toxins and the patches, and there was all the things about the reduced bruising and all that stuff, but I like he set up this idea of perhaps what's happening is when we make recommendations for someone to take a hot bath and they're kind of like, whatever, I'm not really going to do that. Then you say, oh, but if you take a hot bath, I'm going to have you add this thing that's going to make you feel so much better, and it's going to take away your bruising, and it's going to heal your sprains and strains, and it's going to make your fibromyalgia feel better. And all you have to do is add this 2 cups of this special salt into your bath water. Perhaps compliance increases and the people now get into the hot bath for the amount of time that's recommended, at the frequency that's recommended, and they get out of the bath and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel like $1,000,000. Then maybe it's actually the hot water for the proper amount of time, for the proper frequency, and not actually the salt. Paul, I thank you. But the problem is, Paul, that I have 25 years of personal experience with Epsom salt baths, and I have 25 years of patient experience with Epsom salt baths, and something is working. And I am pretty sure it's not just placebo, because I know I've taken both hot water only and Epsom salt baths, and they feel different. And perhaps some of you agree. So, well, Paul's research is pretty much bulletproof, and I love a lot of his points because he makes some really solid scientific points, and that is awesome. Perhaps we just don't know the details of why magnesium sulfate is working with our bodies the way it is, and I don't want to put too much emphasis in how much healing it does and what kind of powers it has, but what we do know is that it's effective. It does make us feel better. Heat therapy of the bath is also very, very helpful. And so I recommend that you do them. And the good news is there's no bad side effects. There's no negative to Epsom salts. There are a few patients of mine who have said, whoa, made the pipes move a little fast. And Paul would say there's no relationship, but I'm sorry. I think there can be a direct relationship to that magnesium perhaps being absorbed and pushing things through a little too quickly. We all know that magnesium can have a diuretic effect. And so that is a possibility. But other than that, no side effects, no downsides. And it is so lovely to sit in there. And I feel like you do feel better after. I know, having done inline skate marathons, if I don't get in that Epsom salt bath the night of the marathon, I am so sore the next day. Conversely, if I don't, I am very sore the next day. So what is the recipe for an Epsom salt bath? Well, it's very simple. It's a lot more salt than you think. And so there are all sorts of fancy salts out there, and Dr. Teal kind of owns the market on it. These guys, there we go, these guys, no advertisement there. I'm not getting paid by Dr. Teal, and in fact, I'll tell you, his salts are too expensive. They're ridiculous. So my recommendation is get them, because they're really good, but you're only going to use a small portion, and then you're going to use the rest that you need to put in there from a cheaper source. So here's my recipe. Half a cup of Dr. Teal's Fancy Schmancy, and why I like it is because he has lovely essential oils in there, which I also think are very effective for relaxation, for sleep inducement, for muscle relaxation, and he's got a couple different combinations of ones that you can choose as far as flavors, and so you can use that, but just use a half cup of that, and then find a cheaper source. And here's a tip. A patient told me this. You can get Epsom salts at a Grange or a Farmer Supply store. I don't know why farmers use Epsom salts. Can anybody tell me? I'm really not sure, but apparently they do, and they sell it cheap. And so you can go and pick up a big load of Epsom salts, keep them in a bucket under your cupboard, and then you use the fancy half cup, and then you put 2 or 3 full cups of cheaper Epsom salts in there, because again, we want the concentration nice and high to pull out, if indeed that happens, the amount of fluids, toxins, whatever is happening in that process. If indeed it is happening, we want to make sure that it is available to do that. So Epsom salt baths, half cup of the Dr. Teal's, 2 to 3 cups of regular, nice warm bath for 20 minutes. Of course, if you get lightheaded or uncomfortable, get out, okay, carefully. And big thing, make sure you rehydrate. Drink lots of water after an Epsom salt bath. I feel like they dehydrate a little bit, and so a nice big glass of water with some fresh organic lemon squeezed in there can be very therapeutic. And I always find I sleep better after an Epsom salt bath, and my patients report sleeping better, and definitely there's a muscle tension, soreness, stiffness difference that happens. So that is my 2 cents on Epsom salts. Thank you, Paul Ingram, for being a big part of my presentation today. Again, his article is fantastic and very funny, and so please download that and read it on your own. Again, it's called Does Epsom Salt Work? I hope you guys have a great weekend, and if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'm happy to answer, and I'll make sure to get back to you in good time. I hope you join me next week. I'm going to be on a plane to Fort Lauderdale, so I'm not quite sure what time we're going to be presenting next week, but I'll be sure to let you know, okay? All right, and remember to press notifications down below so that you get alerted when I'm here, okay? Bye-bye. Have a great weekend, everybody.